Welcome back to Prince of Persia 2008, the reboot. So it's time to acquire, I think, the last of the abilities that we need, which will unlock all the remaining fertile grounds, which means then at that point we'll be able to tackle all of them in the order that we want. But for the time being, we'll tackle the Concubine's territories. So basically the remains of the palace, which basically have the more interesting tidbit with Elika's. Anyway, these last abilities, I think it's... Oh god, I forgot what it's called. Specifically, it's another thing of Ormazd, something like a jump or something. Basically, when you get to the blue pressure plates and you activate, you do this grappling hook thing straight out of Uncharted 4, sorta. There you go. Okay, no. Let me give a better comparison. It's more similar.
That looks way too scripted to be like that.
No. I'm talking about the motion. Maybe it's more similar to the one of your OC Sonic Forces.
It's a much more apt comparison, yeah.
yeah. My bad. But basically, it's another tool that allows you to jump from place to place. The problem is that some of these plates, it's identical to the red pressure plate, it's just that it does a different arc movement. At least the yellow... Oh, no. Thanks.
Okay, I was just one thing I was going to mention. Bit of weird. I think the timing was a bit weird. It was only three years since the previous main game. At least DMC waited, 5.
Well, that is up also to the companies. Anyway, round 2. It basically leaves it's up. It doesn't work like that for any kind of company. It's like it's a case to case in a sense that it depends on what they decide, what they want to decide to do, if all the right people in the team are willing to do that, and if they think there is enough demand. It's all a combination of things. The problem with development is that for a long time, the message that Capcom was getting from the audience was mixed, to say the least. The entire reason why the reboot was done, for example, is because due to the reworked development on Devil May Cry 4, which hindered its story and the level structure, the fan base didn't seem to have to reach a unanimously positively reception of it. Therefore, they thought that the best direction to give was to go for another one. Yeah, basically start over in another direction. I mean, I could have seen that considering the time, but the problem was that about all the time has passed, they chose to give it to a developer that people were not extremely familiar with, especially the Devil May Cry fan base, and that its initial presentation done by Tamim was very peculiar, to just say, but in a sense that he used a PowerPoint presentation to basically mock the average fan base to show how his version of Vision of Dante was so much better. And there you go. You just clip through the floor.
Wow.
Think of it like the Mission Impossible movie. It's the first one.
Mind, just for record, that wasn't a glitch. That's actually how the king is defeated, like that.
Only in that case, they were intentionally making fun of the fan base.
Well, it depends. It depends on what it is. If they were, if the fan base were giving him like, the really stupid stuff like, death
That's
threats or
still
whatever.
no excuse.
I mean,
Well,
as much as that would be detrimental, that would have been a consequence. Up until the presentation, nobody even really cared or thought what Tamim would have decided to do.
Yeah, here basically.
Is he still at the company?
Yes, it wasn't the presentation, if you don't remember, at the PS4, to the point where everyone was like, what, he disappeared for a while after DNC, but so you're almost on the right track.
Basically, James, if you want to know who cast the first stone, that was all him, pretty much.
But basically, he disappeared for a while, but he showed up again on the presentation, and then I forgot if he's properly credited. I think he worked on Hellblade.
And I know he directed the one that game Ninja Theory did after.
Well,
Yeah,
remember
that's
too.
Hellblade.
Yeah, well, remember too. The Bleeding Edge trailer advertises it as having the same battle director from DMC. So yeah, apparently, yeah. It still has the same employees from.
Well, Tamim is more like of a general director than anything.
I think he's one of the heads of Ninja.
Yeah, no, I think it was the founder, but I'm checking in the meantime. Don't worry. So basically, to the point, it all depends. When it comes to the reboots, you have to understand it all depends about who is handling, what's the communication with the fan base, what's the approach of it we want to get. Again, one other example that I can give is the Doom 2016 reboot, where there was video concern because the ID, despite it being still ID software, obviously with different people. Oh, hold on. Basically now, well, I'll teach you later. Basically now, right now we're in a portion of the Royal Palace. Fortunately, corruption has taken the place of the water in the gardens, which means we have to travel by platforms up above the floor. And we need to find a way to get to the fertile ground from here.
What happens to fish if they're corrupted?
They die.
I suppose that's not as bad as some of the things I was imagining.
What, were you imagining that if you eat one of them, you become one of them, like the
No one knows who she really was.
like the Joker fish?
She does. Arden believed with the power of illusion. She could
Wow,
conjure
you haven't seen that
make people
one.
believe whatever she wants
Surprised.
them to believe.
What's the Joker fish?
You okay? So you haven't seen the Laughing Fish? Got
I
it.
don't know.
Basically, Dwebs, there's an
is
episode of
it-
Batman.
is
Huh?
Is it? I was going to ask, is it a comic or is it?
It's an episode off of Batman the Animated. Well, it started as an episode off of Batman the Animated Series. I think it got adapted into comics from then. Basically, though, at some point, Joker had the smart idea to pretty much poison the fish or the water supply and basically copyright it as his own fish here and there. It was nothing more than a sick joke, but one that he planned to make money off of. And he just
I was more a Spider-Man the animated series guy.
Oh, not a bad choice. Oh, shoot, so you probably never got the reference whenever he refers to the gargoyle as Bruce. That was funny.
Well, the only thing I know about gargoyles is that I have a lot of Star Trek actors in it.
Essentially, that was a Batman reference.
This place hasn't been tended
Well,
since my mother
okay, now that's all I know about gargoyles.
There's
It
a
had Star
plate
Trek
attached
actors
to
in
that
it,
pillar over
and
there.
apparently
We can raise
it
if we
went
fill
to
that
shit
pond.
in the third.
Also, to Jova, in Dwebs' credit, Christopher Daniel Barnes as the greatest screaming for Spider-Man ever. Let's face it.
I'll chase you to the ends of the earth.
Oh yeah, not gonna lie, he was great as Peter Parker / Spider-Man, especially when he screamed.
And I've never seen the plate active.
Specifically
Anyway,
in that scene with the black suit. Go ahead.
What we need to do now is this is a traditional basically filling the spot puzzle. Basically, each lever, as long as Elika starts to actually help me, okay, each lever controls the direction where supposedly the water flows. Only when we need to use the corruption instead to move them. Moving them in the correct order will help raising up the platform that we need. There we go. In order to reach the plate that we need. It's actually one of the better puzzles in the game, so it's nice enough. But anyway, in the meantime, Dweebs, I checked. Yes, Tamim is the director of Hellblade. We checked. I don't know if he's also working on Bleeding Edge, but it's basically possible. I mean, Tamim is pretty much the head honcho of the company.
Well, hey, Bleeding Edge sure seems to fit his style, so I wouldn't be surprised by that.
But what was I saying? Yeah, basically, when it came to Doom 2016, a lot of people were a bit concerned because there wasn't too much communication from ID, and there was the fact that the first major things that the people saw were the multiplayer, and that didn't with what we were expecting. It took until pretty much the release date, because if I recall correctly, they didn't even send review copies to journalists and reviewers. So people were really suspicious that it would have been, a disaster. But lo and behold, it actually people suspected that that Bethesda actually, for some reason, went paranoid and didn't release any copies in fear. But surprisingly enough, it turned out well enough. Another case would be probably Castlevania Lords of Shadow. I don't remember actually all development to it, so I cannot quote any part of it. But the first trailer, the first draft and trailer made it clear that it was supposed to be a different game that Konami basically retooled as a Castlevania reboot. And Mercury's team had to just roll with it, and to give them credit, since I played all of the reboot series, I really like actually the work they did. And I speak that as a person who actually also played most of the original series. But I do understand that the general consensus of the original game's fan base is that it was a betrayal. But if I had to ask my opinion, it's probably because of the fact that Konami hasn't actually made a new proper main Castlevania game in years, especially after Iga left the company. I am of the opinion that if along the reboot there was also released a traditional Metroidvania of the classic series, maybe the famous battle of 1999 with Julius Belmont that is prophesized and talked in the Sorrow games, maybe that would have helped with the reboot. But unfortunately, it didn't, and eventually it led to basically Konami not making any new Castlevania games. The collections, from what I heard so far, seems pretty solid, so at least there's that for people to enjoy. There we go.
Yep.
Never said I wasn't either. I can do more than just hit things.
I mean, you
There
got
we go.
to, considering the moves you can do.
The power plate is clear. We can reach the fertile ground.
I figured that one out too.
Great socialization skill. Also,
Moving on.
as you may have noticed, the camera for this section tries to be a bit fixed, but when it resumes control, is a bit weird. Anyway, here we go.
Get ready.
We...
I love how she says get ready after they've already won stuff. Gotta time that a bit better, honey.
Honestly, the palace looks the more what's the term? The more interesting of the places. Like I said. Oops. There we go.
Oh
Figure
snap! Elika getting corrupted. Oh no, it's just the concubine.
No mercy.
AKA the
Anti what now?
well, I was trying to the villain just used her anti
Yes.
Yes, anti what?
the anti-help switch.
Here's the thing though. Even if we die
still-
while
even
Elika's
if we
being
die-
trapped, Elika
Yeah.
will still be able to revive us. So, yeah, all it does is just keep Elika stuck
Whoever
down for a
designed-
bit.
Whoever designed the switch must have just rushed it out the door and not thought about everything.
Oof.
That's putting it lightly, but yeah.
I'm being as diplomatic as I can.
Yeah, the concubine is probably one of the more annoying enemies actually to fight, because not only she eludes most of your attacks, she also it's not. The annoyance basically means that she does that grabbing move where she topples onto the prince constantly. So actually giving it her some damage, and between her putting up the barriers and everything, becomes very tedious on the long run. Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, I forgot if I mentioned this, but if I do, I did. I think I did it briefly. You have a guard button. I think it's R2. Yeah, it's R2. But it barely does anything, if you ask me. Basically, it does have a guard. Most of the enemy attacks, especially when they are in a barrier state, they kind of bypass to it, and sometimes they even inflict you still damage. It's very random in how it works, and it gives again more factory annoyance. It comes to a point where the best way to actually dispel one of the barriers of a warrior like the Concubine is, imagine like a Concubine, is actually let her almost finish you. There we go. And then she will dispel automatically the barrier when she tries to do her final and finishing blow. Thankfully, unlike the Alchemist, I think she doesn't put up the barrier that the damage that you keep is... There we go. Also, another thing that that can happen, if Elika is quote-unquote momentarily incapacitated, like, for example, attack an enemy with a barrier that that didn't allow her to attack, the prince can just move and come near where her body is, and she will automatically get up. And otherwise, she will get up later on. I would like this mechanic if, for the obvious reason, it didn't, still meant nothing on grand scale.
The game also comes across as, the way it's structured, it comes across as being, it isn't quite as well paced as the others, because it seems like you're always just in this constant repetition of walking in between fighting the exact same enemies over and over and over.
Yeah,
it gets repetitive.
Like, it really does. I think the earlier games did a better job of.
Well, maybe it's also how I pace things.
No, Tio, it's the game.
Each general in all of its fertile grounds. The game lets you, if you want, to just go one by one. So.
Well, Tio. Even if we were doing the generals mixed match here and there, here's the thing: it would still just be clear level. General, because here's the thing, there are practically no enemies to fight, so there's nothing to break up the monotony of it. I mean, sure, you get platforming puzzles here and there, but there's only so much platforming on its own can do for a game. Like, maybe this is like the very first era of video games, this would be, wow, amazing, but no, we're out of that era, like, well, again, even Mega Man, which is something as early as like the late 80s or 90s, can have a lot of stuff to mix things up. Like, it doesn't feel like you're just doing the same thing over again, like, this here boss. And that's another thing. With a lot of the bosses in this game, it doesn't feel like you have to change up your tactics that much. I mean, sure, some of them can be defeated in different ways, but in a lot of cases, it feels like the same thing, especially since you can essentially just tank them at the end of the day. Whereas with, stuff like Mega Man, Crash Bandicoot, or Sonic, you have to constantly change up how you play the game to match new bosses, change up how you play the game to match new levels here and there. And sure, there are new level gimmicks here and there, but essentially, it's more or less kind of the same thing.
What you're saying, Jova, is that this feels as if we were playing a Sonic game, where what you do is alternate between the final bosses of Colors, Lost World, and Horses.
I mean, I guess, but that's assuming you don't change anything. Like, the reason those bosses work is like, well,
yeah, that's what they mean. They have a different flavor, but they are functionally basically the same.
Yeah. Ah, that's what you mean. Yeah.
That's the thing. Kishimoto seems like he doesn't know how to make any other type of final boss. It's so weird.
Eh?
Well, Generation. Did he work on Generation? Because the time...
Kishimoto didn't work in Generations. That was Hiroshi Miyamoto who directed that.
Okay.
Kishimoto was the guy who directed Sonic Colors, Lost World, and Forces.
Okay.
So you used to spend
with Sonic games, it's like a... Well, at least from my perspective and what I'm seeing, every Sonic game is only... You could literally just count down how long it'll be before people suddenly decide, actually that game sucked. I'm literally waiting for the day.
As a person who normally tries to stay away from Sonic, I refer to you to search the Sonic Cycle image.
Oh God, no! There's a reason that Sonic Cycle got banned, because that thing's a load of crap.
Like I was saying, I'm not in a positive or negative way, more in a neutral way. I'm waiting for the day when people
make the gardens grow again.
What are you, the Lorex?
Well, Dwibs, join the club because I'm waiting for the eventual time when the Zelda fan base turns on Breath of the Wild and suddenly starts crap, only for the next one to come out and then suddenly Breath of the Wild is great again. Because
Yeah, I'm like that with I said it in a status, but I'm like that with I'm waiting for that to happen to Sonic Mania. Again, not positively or negatively. Just for people say, yeah, you know what? Actually, Sonic Mania was made by a bunch of hacks who got lucky. That's fucking.
Sonic Mania was a mistake. It's nothing but trash.
Yeah. Sonic Mania.
We're at that point now, are we?
I can just hear the complaints. Every single level is just ones from earlier games. What do you mean there are like 3 original
4,
levels?
actually.
That's detrimental to my argument.
Pretty much. Alright,
What do you mean that the old levels are different enough for them to still be perfectly enjoyable?
It's the same.
What do you mean that technically the majority of levels are new ones?
Anyway, we're about to get to see more of it, but you had a taste with. Oh Jesus!
Oh no,
no,
we've
you
been
got
slapped
that
up.
taste
It's okay. Elika, to the rescue.
You know, Theo, I have to admit, I kind of wish I had this chick when I was playing Eco.
Really?
That would make a relation. Basically, Java,
sure.
Eco can be very frustrating.
Well, like I said, that's going to the other extreme of all. Like, Eco is basically the other extreme of this. You have basically an escortee that is extreme, is of the worst kind that you can imagine. So imagine every worst trope associated with an escort mission, boom, Eco is off.
Basically, yeah.
That way to defend your escortee, that behavior of your escortee, incredibly annoyingly precise enemy AI. The game has all of them. Like.
That's why Last Guardian, like we said like me and Theo said in our commentary, it feels a lot more like that concept and much better because Trico is actually a much cooler partner.
And he's a better pet.
Well, yeah, he's the best Pokemon, of course.
So, okay, so Elika, honest question, girl. You can float pretty much indefinitely, as some of your powers have shown. Why can't you just constantly do that double jump thing with the Prince?
Again,
Well, the answer to that is simple. Fuck you.
I already told you, Joe, using her powers on a constant basis basically drains her stamina.
Even though she uses it constantly to revive us from death.
Well, yeah, but still some time passes her for her to recover. Like,
that's the thing too. Yeah, like you said yourself. To which one?
Active. We're going to have to time it right to use it.
There were stairs here.
Aren't now. We're going to have to do this the hard way. We've got to climb all the way up this, haven't we?
There's a mechanism partway up that will take us to the top.
I'll go first. Hey, I'm staring at my ass. I felt you looking.
I thought you'd lost your ass.
Donkey. I can feel you looking.
Just climb the tower.
Welcome to my court. Do you come seeking favors or forgiveness? A blessing? Or something more? Listen, you can hear your time disappearing. I have an eternity. You a few last hope.
Is it up, baby? Ready? We'll have to time this right.
be where you rule from, huh, princess?
This is my father's court. This is his land. Ready to go on? Ormazd.
Proper, serious Spider-Man, you know? It's the wrong kind of comedy.
Can you hear us, Trevor?
Yeah.
I suppose
Well,
so.
the Jova drop?
Yeah,
Well, yeah, he did.
I did?
Yeah.
but you did. Anyway, as you can see, it's all about climbing these enormous towers from the inside.
Hello and welcome to the prototype of Catherine.
Not really, babes. There are no blocks, no boys, and no.
No edge. No edge.
I
Get it?
forgot his name.
Again, that's
Azrael.
And a
No,
severe lack of cleavage.
No Azrael telling you a question about your life decisions.
again. I said it's the prototype.
Fair enough.
It was gonna be on this, but then.
Alright. The game tries to spice things up a bit. Oh no, actually, no.
The same boss.
No, not waves, because I got confused with another Fertile Ground boss fight.
Okay.
Just bear with it for
We're like 8 parts into it, so I've had enough bearing.
Well, it's a different general.
Joy.
Be overthrown by the border, so why did you even put them?
Mm-hmm.
At least this time around it's much more manageable, and thanks to the arena which is much more larger and without the goop at the borders. Unfortunately, she tries to do the combined attack, cutscene attack. There you go. Oh shit. Dweebs, was that kind of like a wrestling move? Grab your neck with your feet and slam it on the ground?
It can be, but you have to be
Acrobatic.
Really good at it, so yeah, plus you have to make sure you don't actually, kill.
Well, yeah, obviously.
Because stuff involving the throat can easily go wrong if you're not careful.
Yeah.
It's interesting. It's interesting that every time there's like a scripted scene during the fight,
The game freezes for a second, yeah.
I mean, this kind of thing happened in Blue Dragon, but that was when we were transitioning from an FMV to a natural to load the in-game assets. But this entire game.
That looked tough. Don't tempt our I'll keep you safe. Stop.
Another way where you can actually effectively damage the enemy concubine for a stage like this is to push her like I did before on a column. In that case, you will actually initiate the grabbing sequence, and at that point, the prince will smash her onto the column and do some more damage.
Ouch.
Alright, time to heal it.
Yeah, this is like the, it's like in old 2D games where you go to places and you accomplish the same thing over and over and over. But
Like I said, very arcade in its presentation and level structure.
This woman feels a lot like she has the green thumb from Troll in Central
Sadly.
Park. Yeah, she's trying to make everything green and flowery.
Sure, and how long would that have lasted? I just want to get out of here. I want to
Prince of Persia, the quest.
You know, game. If the protagonist is not invested in the fucking story, why the hell should I?
What is it with
They're trying to
reboots
do the
like
whole
this?
Tsundere story arc in a sense. Oh, I don't really want to help you, but in reality, I'm doing it because I care. But it's
I
just
totally
that,
don't care about Chewbacca.
yeah, pretty much. It's just that with this kind of story where the entire structure of the game is centered around the interaction between the Prince and Elika, this kind of attitude should have ended, let's say, one part ago, like at the halfway point.
Yeah.
Like,
That's
here's
my-
the problem with
again-
this kind of
again-
attitude.
again-
At
Here's-
worst, just make you think that they're going for this, and then have the last minute type of misunderstanding, because considering Hollywood still uses to this day, this game might as well have tried to use that.
Yeah, this is.
See,
sorry,
here's
sorry.
a major problem
Oh,
with
God.
this attitude. It borders on making the characters unlikable, similar to an issue that the DMC reboot has. I don't get what it is with reboots that decide to make our protagonists or other main characters borderline unlikable compared to their original counterparts.
It
It's so
seems to be
weird.
a program. It's not just for video games, Jova. Remember what the new 52 has done to Jaime Reyes, for example.
Oh god, again, I cannot stress enough how glad I am that the new 52 is done with.
For those without context, all you need to know is that consider New 52 as a reboot of the story. Jaime Reyes is a superhero in the DC universe called the Blue Beetle. All you need to know is that he's kind of like Robbie in a sense that there are different figures called the Blue Beetle. He's one of them. In the original stories, in the original continuity, it was actually a very well written and tight story about him actually confessing his identity almost immediately to his entire family, and the story played along with that in a sense of having the family as supporting characters, sometimes even interactive with menaces that happen, and never in a way like say Spider-Man would have done with too much angst, or say, oh no, they're constantly in danger, I need to be always on my toes, or like that. It felt a breath of fresh air for this kind of storytelling. Comes the new 52 reboot, and in order to make things fresh, they make everything in the life of Jaime miserable, in the sense that the superpowers that he have, long story, but they prevent him from telling his secret identity, to the point where his family basically ostracizes him, he runs away, and nobody loves him. Because that's what people want to know, especially, both newcomers and fans of the original series.
Again,
That's
the
nice.
new 52 may have had some good ideas, but holy cow, for the most part, it
Honestly, Jova, everything good that I may remember from New 52 were some Batman stories like the Court of Owls. That's pretty much it.
And even then, I think that they reincorporated that into the Batman of DC Rebirth anyway, so no loss
Yeah.
there.
It's the same problem I have with Dr. Lautrec's character in the sense that he starts off an asshole, he continues to be an asshole, and doesn't at all ever, deter from that behavior. Again, you can make an argument that maybe he's supposed to be a sociopath. The problem is the game never addresses that. It doesn't explore that in any way, shape, or form. He's just an asshole, and you're just supposed to like him as he is.
The best we get from him is that he lightens up on the insults by the end of that game, but
Go to those places.
yeah, aside from that, he's still kind of a jerk.
I mean, I would argue that even in the ending, he still has a lot of despicable stuff, like basically marrying Sophie. He basically says that he wants to marry Sophie specifically because of her ability, because he needs her, not because he actually cares for her.
I chalk that up to the writers
you can
intending for him just to hide his feelings.
Yeah,
The
you can
problem.
argue tsundere, but the game didn't really earn its tsundere stuff. You got.
Yeah, that's pretty much what I was about to say. It's like, well, I mean, I pretty much am sure that the writers intended for it to be just about him hiding his true feelings for her. The problem was, of course, the execution in it. Then again, we get stuff like the DMC reboot where, none of that even goes. Like, Dante is terrible from top to bottom in that game.
Welcome to my
Okay, well, I will break a lance, as we say in my country, in favor of Dante in a sense that at least near the end, he actually starts to get better. It's Virgil, the one that progressively gets worse and worse instead.
True.
And that's kind of an insult because even if you disregard the fact that Virgil in the original series was one of the greatest villains ever created in Capcom history, in a sense of being evil, but at the same time intelligent, smart, and with a pragmatic sense. Even if you take that, Virgil on its own is just an opportunistic dick. That's pretty much it. It starts very nice, but at the end, and at the halfway point, he starts lusting for powers to the point where he surpasses the horizon limit.
Hey, Tia, what about the
he never recovers from there.
Hey, Tia, what about the tasteful scene where he shoots a pregnant woman through the stomach?
Which one?
Wow,
Sorry,
somebody died.
Virgil in the reboot, remember?
Yeah. Basically, let me explain quickly. This is called, as they say in the dialogue, the spiral dreams. And the concubine is taking advantage of that by giving you more illusions to strike.
I'm free.
Be careful. She's still around here somewhere.
What are your dreams, little man? What fantasies can I make true? What desires will you paint upon my canvas?
I just figured something out.
What?
Go on.
It's a reboot of a series that many people are familiar with, and it involves you just going around doing the exact same thing over and over and over.
Bomberman
I guess Bomberman X Zero.
With an off art style.
Bomberman X Zero.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, the Bomberman X Zero did not have a story mode.
I know the dream.
Yeah.
It had a what if you even call it a story.
Exactly. At least this one has the semblance of it.
We are not so distant, you and I.
We're not so different, you and I.
You know, here's what I don't get. Why?
Act Zero was just
You know,
Act Zero was just your robot.
of all the generals to constantly be in our heads, I get the concubine, but why not also the alchemist? Like, it's kind of a missed opportunity to not have, the generals speak more. Like, that's one thing I'll give Sonic Lost World. At least when we encountered the Zeti, they constantly engaged us through telepathic thought speech, like all
If only
six
they
of
have a
them.
good personality to go along with that.
Oh, okay.
The fat one.
Okay. Zaz had some layers to him. Zavik was definitely the best. Zik was not bad. Xena had potential. Zor, okay, I flipping love Zor. Not just because he's voiced by Sam Rico, but Zor is just the best. But I digress.
Well, he's the one that doesn't give a shit, so yeah.
Again, though, why is it so hard for them to try and give these generals more character? Like, well, when even Sega can get the basic minimum, why can't you with these generals? Especially since they're like the only enemies we face in this game aside from Elika's father and whoever that evil guy is and the occasional evil Mook. Like, maybe
Yeah.
if there were more mooks in this game, I wouldn't mind, but there's barely any. Like, don't get me wrong, I get that combat isn't always handled the best, but that doesn't mean you should practically erase it since you still have combat anyway.
Not just that,
That will take us to the top.
I explained how the gameplay works, both in platforming element and for the combat. But think about it for a second. This reboot is supposed to attract newcomers and everything. I forgot if I asked this already, but what is this game for? Who is this game for?
I have no idea.
That's a good question,
Joe.
which
I
is
honestly
enough.
have no...
Well, I mean, it's a platformer, so realistically it should be for me, but I just couldn't care less, to be honest.
Well,
at
here's the thing,
moment.
Shuri. Here's the thing, Shuri. Going off of the advertising, you wouldn't have known that this was a proper platformer, seeing as how there's a difference between traditional platformers and parkour platformers, of which there aren't many like this game. Basically, Shuri, the advertising in this game was more so for the story. Yeah, funny how that turned out.
But there isn't really a whole lot of that at the moment.
And the presentation, I distinctly remember that there was a sort of a tech demo that Ubisoft showed at some point with the Prince battling the Hunter alone, if I recall correctly. So I remember distinctly that, but it was one of the PlayStation magazines that I read. So aside from that, there wasn't that much.
Because that's what you
And
want
yeah,
to do
who
for
is
Prince
this
of
for
Persia.
then? Because the presentation, although not actually bad, is very disjointed.
Let me put it this, the
Like we said,
presentation
yeah,
is
like
not
I
the
said,
best thing about this game. The best thing, and the thing they should have marketed about this game, was the actual parkour, since, you know, that's what people know Prince of Persia for. And yeah, okay, sure, for a reboot, you're supposed to change some things up, but that doesn't mean you get rid of the traditional sense. It's like if you made a Mario reboot where platforming isn't the main sense. I don't care what your excuse is, Mario is always to be about platforming in the mainline series.
Exactly. Like if you go that, like if you change that much, it stops becomes betrayal. Like at that point, you might as well just make a new IP if you're gonna change it to that point.
Which is precisely Ubisoft is doing with Skull and Bones due to what happened to Assassin's Creed 4 Black Flag.
I'm sure hoping that
I mean,
Skull and
you
Bones
don't
will actually
see-
get to be a thing and not cancelled, seeing as how the development of that game is starting to get worrying.
You don't see Mario. Sorry.
But we had the only instances of major cancellations of AAA games in recent years were practically never about the games were in development hell. More like games where there were talks with each company, like for example Scalebound. We did saw at the E3 presentation not too long before it was cancelled, for example.
Oh, yeah.
Development. If anything, development hell games, these last example, have actually eventually still got to be released with different results, mind you. So, but not to the point of any of them being cancelled.
Like,
I'm confident both Beyond Good and Evil 2 and the Skull and Bones are still happening. It's just obviously puzzling the behavior that Ubisoft decided to adopt for this year's E3 and the presentation of in general for what we're going to do. But it's not like to a point of saying, "Oh, very good, we're the next Titanic, we're sinking forever."
Oh
like that.
god, thank god no. But you know, it's funny. Speaking about this game and how Ubisoft were back then reminds me of how they are now, where they don't seem to have a clear idea of what they want to do with their stuff, even the stuff that looks promising. Don't even get me started on that.
I'm generally convinced that the people who made this game don't even care much or even know much about Prince of Persia, and yet they were told to reboot this, so they just did whatever, and they looked it up on the internet and have a very surface level knowledge of what the series is, and basically this is, and they read Forgotten Sands, the Red Sands of Time's Wikipedia synopsis, and they just went from there. That's like this game barely shows any resemblance to what the previous series was.
Like, you know, again, I know we talk about how the worst thing about this game is technically the end, but unlike Mass Effect 3, this game doesn't exactly have the luxury that the stuff in between the beginning and the end are really that appealing either. And you know, okay, you know what this feels like? This feels like if Cuphead had, like, levels before the bosses, but here's the thing. Cuphead is a game about boss rushes. The problem is that this game feels like it's emphasizing more on its bosses than the actual platforming here and there. Which, okay,
Yeah.
you want to focus on bosses, that's fine, but it really feels like we should care more about the bosses than we do the actual gameplay outside of the bosses with combat. And that's kind of jarring, seeing as how, again, the bosses are really the only enemies we'll be fighting except for a few mooks here and there. Like, imagine how much it would throw Cuphead's pacing off if you had an awkward level before you faced each boss. No matter how fun they were, it gets draining.
It's like I've said this various times before. Like, if this is important too.
Well, every dialogue, technically speaking, should be important to reinforce the characters, but
Sure.
Covered in corruption and spouting stuff about our
for example, the mini story arc with the dialogue of this place was about dreams, hopes, and situations. But the moral at the end is that yes, the architectural culture was great and everything, but unfortunately, what happens happens, and you need to move on. Extremely simplistic, but for the stuff that we want to do for here, I can sort of understand.
I think
the
part of the
problem
problem
is that
is
the
like,
writing
well,
is
we're
so
never
bland.
we're never really gonna get to see this world that they're constantly talking about, seeing as how, as far as we know, the prince is here just for this location. Like, let's imagine that they plan to continue this as a series, and they kind of sort of did with handheld games.
I think I mentioned this already once again, but compared these to, well, sorry for the lower common denominator, Dark Souls. Dark Souls is all about exploring ruins of city and you being told how majestic these they were in the past and everything. But first of all, presentation is better. Second, sometimes you even get to see a glimpse of it. Dark Souls 2, for all the troubles that it does, I believe it has a sort of an interesting payoff near the end of its DLCs. Yes.
I cannot stress enough, Dark Souls actually does have a world aside from the one you're just being told about as well. Like, again, this isn't really a world, this is just a world that used to be, and not in the good sense. Like, again, let's think about it like this. In the old Prince of Persia games, when you were in a location, the focus wasn't so much on it. But even still, you knew that place top to bottom. Yes, even with Warrior Within, you got to know the island pretty dang well from, just the visuals, the looks around and everything. The somewhat memorable moments here and there. Here, it literally just feels like you're on a tour trip. Like, you'll probably forget about it after you're done. Like, even if this had been its own series, how much you want to bet we would have probably never remembered a lick about this place because of it.
Anyway, see you for the next part.
See ya.
Yeah.